Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, July the 18th, 2025. Today, Mercury comes to a standstill. It is indeed stationary retrograde. And over the next few weeks, it will be going backwards from the Earth's perspective. And this is an important event. And in this video, I will be looking at what it means for Mercury to be retrograde and what it means for Mercury to go retrograde at around 15 degrees Leo, because that is the point where it does come to a standstill. But before I look at Mercury retrograde in detail, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Friday, July the 18th, 2025. So here is the chart for today, set for noon at New York. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So first thing to say is that the moon is moving into Taurus. So London time at around sort of 8:59 a.m. The moon moved out of Aries, and when it moves out of Aries and goes into Taurus, so if you're in the Americas, that will be sort of in the middle of the night. And so for most of us, it will be a moon in Taurus day. Now, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, then it won't be until this evening that the moon moves into Taurus. Now, moon moving into Taurus. So the moon is exalted in Taurus. So the moon works very well in this sign. And it does create a bit of a change. We have had the moon in Aries, in a fire sign. And, moon in a fire sign, it's quite an action-orientated placement for the moon. We want to respond, and we feel that we've got things we need to do, and we don't want to just stand still. And then the moon moves into Taurus, an earth sign. Things do become slower, and they become more considered, perhaps, but we perhaps have a better connection with the earth, with material reality. And the earth is not just about money; it's about the physical earth. It's about the environment. Now, when the moon moves into Taurus, it starts to make a sextile to Jupiter, and this sextile to Jupiter is a really good aspect. I mean, Jupiter is exalted, moon is exalted. They're in sextile to one another. So over the course of the day, the moon is getting closer to that sextile to Jupiter. So, you might say that this is potentially quite a good day for starting projects. And if you've been waiting to do something, maybe with the moon applying to a sextile of Jupiter, now might be the time. Now, there are other things to consider. It's true that the moon is waning. We've just had the last quarter moon, and so we're now in the sort of final run up to the new moon. So you might say that you wouldn't want to start something right at the end of a lunar cycle, but if you feel you have to, then moon sextile Jupiter, it's a very pleasant aspect, and hopefully that should say something about the day and what it's like and what the general experience is. And to my mind, it looks pretty good. Additionally, Mercury is making a sextile to Venus, and so Mercury at where's Mercury gone? Mercury at 1534 Leo is sextile Venus at 1541 Gemini. So Mercury sextile Venus, that is another great aspect, at least in theory. I mean, these two planets, neither of them particularly malefic. They come together. Sextile is a fortunate aspect, and it can be about how we come across, how we communicate, but it can also be about art. I mean, Reinhold Ebertin, in the combination of stellar influences, he very much sees Mercury Venus as being about art. I mean, I'll give you an example of what he says. So again, Reinhold Ebertin's combination of stellar influences, I think it's a book that anyone who's serious about astrology should own. And what's nice about Reinhold Ebertin is that he gives very brief descriptions. You don't have to you don't have to go through pages and pages. He just gets straight to the point. And he says about Mercury, Venus, in a positive sense, he says a sense of form and design, beauty and art, an intellect influenced strongly by feeling, the wings of artistic genius and inspiration, a light-hearted nature, cheerfulness and hilarity. So he sees it in a fortunate way. I mean, of course, this is a sextile. I mean, there is a negative view to Mercury, Venus, but I don't think we need to necessarily go into that because we're talking about a sextile. And it is about art and about beauty. And so if you think about that aspect, Mercury, Venus, Mercury, could be about us creating things with our mind, but it might also be about us communicating what we're doing, telling people about our artistic endeavors, for example. And so if we're doing something creative, maybe we just shouldn't be quiet about it. Perhaps people need to know. And with Mercury sextile Venus, I think that we will be able to explain ourselves very well. Now, it's certainly a great aspect, Mercury sextile Venus, and Mercury, of course, is going retrograde. I mean, this is the moment it turns. So sort of 5:45 a.m. London time today, which would be 45 minutes past midnight New York time, Mercury does come to a standstill. Now remember, this is from the Earth's perspective. If you have a heliocentric system, Mercury, of course, never goes retrograde in terms of moving around the sun. But, of course, we have an Earth view, and there are times when Mercury seems to be going backwards against the background of the stars. And so, at 5:45 a.m. London time, Mercury comes to a standstill. And I'm going to talk a lot more about Mercury going retrograde at the end of a video, but the usual things. It goes retrograde, stays retrograde for the next few weeks. It may be a time where things are slower than usual. Messages may get mixed up. But, I can go on, and Mercury is also coming to a standstill quite close to the Aries point. It's 135 degrees from the Aries point. And so with the Aries point, one thinks about the world at large. And so with Mercury 135 degrees from the Aries point, it's quite possible that this retrograde Mercury will be felt across the world, and people will be thinking about the world and delays, and people were expecting something to happen and it doesn't happen, and we shouldn't underestimate its impact. And of course, if Mercury goes stationary close to an important point in a national horoscope, then that might be important. I mean, I found one country where Mercury retrograde could have a special impact. I mean, I'll be talking about that later in the video. I'm sure there are other countries, but anyway, we'll see what we can find. And so that's the broad picture. I think because of that Moon sextile Jupiter, and also of course Mercury sextile Venus, I think overall it may actually be quite a good day. And if we take advantage of what's on offer, I think that we could make good progress, and also we might feel quite happy. I mean, why shouldn't we feel happy with the Moon making a sextile to Jupiter? So that's a picture set for New York. Certainly in New York, the Moon is in Taurus for most of the day. Goes into Taurus in the middle of the night in the morning. Now, if on the other hand you are in Australasia or Eastern Asia, tis a slightly different picture. So if we set the chart for noon in Sydney, again as a representative of Australasia, then at noon the Moon is at 26 degrees 29 Aries. So if you are in Australasia, then for most of the day, the moon will be in late Aries. And so the experience could be different. And, with the moon in late Aries, it's going to be... No, it's not void, of course, because the moon is going to be making a square to the sun. And so that moon square sun, moon in Aries square sun in Cancer, could actually be the real aspect to consider. And I sort of talked about that yesterday. It is the last quarter moon, and it may be about the crisis between wanting to do something, moon in Aries, but having to accept or at least appreciate certain restrictions represented by sun in Cancer. We want to do, for example, there are things we want to do, but there are obligations, responsibilities, perhaps connected with one's family, for example, if one thinks about Cancer. And so there might be a sort of a crisis of action if you are in Australasia. So there's going to be a bit of a difference in experience if you're in Australasia compared with the Americas. And of course the moon won't move into Taurus until this evening, but it will get there. And so if you're worried that you might be missing the moon sextile Jupiter, don't worry. It will just happen sort of later in the day. And so if I were to give any advice for today for Australia, if you're in Australasia, well, I would say stay up late. If you've got any important things to do, as late as possible, because the first part of the day, things might be a bit slow. And turning to the heliocentric view, here are the planets with from the view of the Sun, and the Mercury has made a square to Saturn. So we had a heliocentric square between Mercury and Saturn. We're probably still feeling it. And so Mercury square Saturn, you could say it's a bit sluggish, but also there is a general awareness of limitations, or it could be the obstacles we have to face. But Mercury is also, it's making a square to Neptune. And so that Mercury square Neptune, heliocentric, it's something quite general, and it could be spiritual. It's about people on Earth looking for something that goes beyond themselves in a positive way. But also Mercury square Neptune can be a very confusing aspect, or a confused aspect. There are things we're trying to understand. There are things that lots of people are trying to understand and are not doing a very good job of it. And if you see people being very sure of themselves, particularly if they're public figures with Mercury square Neptune, don't believe them. They don't necessarily know what they're talking about at best. And at worst, they could actually be lying. Yes, that really is possible. So that's a heliocentric picture. And now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, July the 18th, 2025. Aries. Aries, the moon is moving out of your sign, and you might say that is disappointing. It was nice having a moon in Aries. It meant that there were plenty of things to do, and at the same time there might have been an obligation to act. You felt that something had to be done, and if you didn't do it, then you might miss your chance. So you had that moment. Of course, if you're in Australasia, you're still experiencing this crisis of action. But I think for most of us, we need to think about it in terms of the moon being in Taurus rather than Aries. And so, with the moon moving into Taurus, yes, things slow down, and at the same time, some of your priorities might change. You're looking at the world and how it's unfolding, and it might be rather infuriating, because you might realize how slow things are, very slow, slower than you'd like them to be. And being an Aries, that could make you impatient. And okay, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it just might be that we're moving into sort of late July, the summer doldrums. Things just aren't moving as quickly as they should be doing, at least from an Aries perspective. But there are all sorts of reasons that people come up with why something can't be done. And people may just feel like sort of they're dead weights, and rather than sort of get angry about it, get annoyed, show your impatience, it's probably best that you accept the situation, but you certainly shouldn't be sort of feeling that you really have to push it. I mean, that is absolutely not the right approach. And don't forget, Aries, that Mars is starting to make a conjunction to the South Node. It's getting pretty close to that conjunction of the South Node. And so, the problem with Mars making a conjunction to the South Node is that you might just be tempted to act in a way that just isn't right. You get your timing wrong, or you say the wrong thing. You just feel you have to say something, do something, and it just doesn't work out. And so you might well need some discipline. I mean, that could matter. And additionally, perhaps you need to really start to consider what your priorities might be. Now that the moon is moving into Taurus. So the moon in Taurus can be about the material, and Aries is, I would have said, one of the least materialistic signs, but the material does matter. And so if you have an opportunity to do something involving money, perhaps, or just things you just touch, it may be the earth, just feeling the raw, cold earth, and just engaging with it, that is the right thing to do. And if you have the opportunity, financial activities today should actually be quite effective. And the reason for that is that the moon is making a sextile to Jupiter, and this sextile between the moon and Jupiter, it's a very fortunate aspect, and it's lucky. Things move, things happen, and so if you are involved with something of a financial or material nature, there's no reason why it can't work out for you. But don't be impatient. It's not about taking any huge initiatives. It's just about gently working towards what you want, and not making a big effort to get attention, making a big fuss. It's not like that. But this moon sextile Jupiter, going back to the Earth, it may not be just about money. It could be about the environment, the raw soil, and things connected with plants, the earth, growth. That's all worth doing. Sometimes Aries can get ahead of itself, and you do need to be grounded. And I think that moon sextile Jupiter could actually be something that really does bring you down to earth in a fortunate way. And additionally, we have got Mercury going retrograde, and Mercury going retrograde is going to affect all of us. Now, this Mercury retrograde, for you, may not be such a bad thing, and it might be that you've been sort of too fast. You've been just sort of moving through things very quickly, and you hadn't given things enough time. And I'm thinking particularly of things that you might be good at, things that you have a real talent for, but you don't give them enough chance to develop. And maybe you were working on something and you were doing a reasonable job, but you hadn't been precise enough, or you were just moving too quickly, moving from one thing to another. And with Mercury going retrograde, it's encouraging you to just stop and reconsider, and perhaps to go back over old ground. So to just consider, who you are, what you can do, and making sure that you can do it well, especially as Mercury goes retrograde, exactly sextile Venus. And so because it goes sextile, because it's sextile Venus, that is a very artistic aspect, as I said in the introduction. And so maybe there's some part of you, that sort of artistic, creative side of you, that you haven't given a sufficient chance in the recent past, and now you have another chance over the next few weeks to really get it together. And also, the Mercury sextile Venus is a good aspect for relating, and you can relate with other people. You need some patience, because some people are slow, and it can be frustrating when people just don't want to move very quickly, and you have to take your time and not feel that you have to move at the speed of light. And if you can just be patient with other people, I think they will respond very well. And so and it's possible that you can actually, with other people, explore some of the things you're doing, get some encouragement, get some feedback. So overall, Aries, if you handle it in the wrong way, it could be a very frustrating day. If you're in a hurry and you get frustrated that things aren't moving, you could get frustrated that things aren't moving fast enough. But if you just accept the change of pace, then I think that today could actually be very satisfying. Taurus, the moon is moving into your sign, and when it moves into your sign, it makes a sextile to Jupiter. So this means that today is probably one of your better days. I mean, all things being equal. I mean, no promises there, but things do look pretty good. I think that you'll be able to respond very well to other people, and to whatever is thrown your way. I think you'll be able to respond in a very sort of sensitive way, and you'll know how to handle yourself, and you'll have a groundedness to you that people are going to appreciate. We do live in very unstable times, and when people just don't, sometimes they don't know what's going on. It can be very confusing, and sometimes what they need is a nice grounded Taurus like yourself to, just to bring everything down to earth. And that is something that you very much can do, because the moon is making that sextile to Jupiter, and you'll be able to speak in a way that is sort of calm and measured, and you'll be very good at explaining things and convincing people that there's nothing to worry about. And so yes, take advantage of this fact that you can really be sort of a calming influence. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you just have to be at everyone's disposal. You have your own ambitions. There are things you want to achieve, because the moon, when it moves into Taurus, it does actually make a square to Pluto, and that moon square Pluto, it does remind you of your own priorities, and you're going to be able to pursue those priorities in a way that is fairly single-minded, but you can do it without ruffling any feathers. You can be calm on the outside. You can be very determined, deep down. And so you could say you can almost have your cake and eat it. You can come over as a reasonable, relaxed person, but all the while you can be making things happen and getting things done. And so that does mean that you can pack in a lot. And additionally, we have a sextile between Mercury and Venus. So it really does look good, that sextile between Mercury and Venus. It's a great aspect. It's an aspect that puts you in touch with who you are and what's important to you, and it kind of feeds into some of your ambitions as well, because this Mercury sextile Venus allows you to think perhaps about how to be rewarded. I mean, rewards always matter if you're a Taurus, or they should matter if you're a Taurus. If you do something, you want to be recognized. And with Mercury sextile Venus, you know how to be recognized. Recognition can take many forms. Of course, one form of recognition, perhaps the simplest form of recognition, is getting paid for something or getting some kind of financial reward. So if you're feeling you're not being sufficiently rewarded for what you're doing, then with Mercury sextile Venus, you can take action. And from a money point of view, I would have said that today should be pretty good. And we have to say, though, that Mercury is coming to a standstill, the stationary retrograde. Now, this Mercury retrograde, thinking about it, I think for many people, this Mercury retrograde is not going to be too bad. We all often regard Mercury retrograde as being, a real problem. It's could just make things worse. But I'm not convinced, particularly this one. Remember, Mercury goes retrograde, sextile Venus, which is your ruler. So maybe you're actually going to benefit from Mercury going retrograde, and it might allow you to just go over things one more time. It might have something to do with your home, for example. So perhaps you want to think about your domestic arrangements. Perhaps you'd made some decisions, but now with Mercury going retrograde, you can have a look at those decisions and decide whether they really make sense. And if you've been in the process of making financial decisions, perhaps relating to property, not necessarily, just could be financial decisions in general, then with Mercury sextile Venus, you've got a great chance to just look over them again. And over the next few weeks, you can perhaps gather information, and you can sort of reconsider things, and look at your home, look at some of the perhaps the organizational details about your home. Whether it's your home, whether you rent it, there are certain things that you need to look at, or you can benefit from looking at. And if you do that, things can become a lot clearer. And so by the time Mercury goes stationary direct on August the 11th, things may be a lot clearer, and you may have a better idea about what you really want. Gemini, of course, we can't avoid the fact that Mercury is coming to a standstill, and it's coming to a standstill in Leo. And you might say that if you're a Gemini, that this might sound like a negative event. I mean, it has a bad reputation, Mercury going retrograde. If things go wrong, plans have to be reconsidered, we have to start again. It's just difficult. At least that's the standard view of Mercury going retrograde. But Gemini, I'm not 100% convinced that you should see it like this. I think that you should regard Mercury going retrograde as an opportunity, and perhaps as another chance. We always want second chances, and this is one feature of Mercury going retrograde, because obviously what happens when Mercury goes retrograde, I mean, obviously it goes backwards. And so how do we conceive going backwards? Well, going backwards means we're going back over old territory, over old ground. Now, Geminis don't like to be bored, and so what Gemini really hate doing is going backwards, having to look at it again. It's just boring, but it can be very useful. And so you may have made decisions, you may have had ideas, and now, Mercury going retrograde, you have a chance to just stop what you're doing and stop moving forward and start to go back and start to reconsider, what has happened in the past, what you've done in the past, and you can be very constructive about it. And when you actually look at it again, you see that maybe you've made some mistakes, or you've made some miscalculations, or you've made some false assumptions, and you have a chance to revise your work. And that's great. That's something that really should be welcome. Very often we don't have a chance to revise our work. It's a finished product. We do it, and it's done, and we have to stand by it. But you don't. You can go back over it, and so that is good news. And additionally, Mercury goes retrograde in sextile aspect to Venus, and that is great. It really is good, because Venus is the benefic. It's the lesser benefic. Jupiter's the greater benefic. So Mercury sextile Venus is an aspect that is fortunate. And you could say that with that moment Mercury is sextile Venus, it tells you something maybe about the next 3 weeks. And so you've got this Mercury sextile Venus feel to the next 3 weeks. And so, that might say something about how you come across, about your attitude to aesthetics or beauty. You might have done something so far and it looked good, but it could have been better. And over the next 3 weeks, you can make something look even better. And it may say something about the way you appear, how you choose to dress yourself, for example, or how you decorate. And so if you've been, for example, planning on decorating something, you might have second thoughts now. And it's good that you're having second thoughts with Mercury sextile Venus. And over the next 3 weeks, you'll start to realize what actually does look good in a lasting sense. And of course, Venus is a planet that's often related to money. And so with Mercury sextile Venus, you have sort of another chance to look at your finances and consider what you can do to make things better. And I think you're going to have lots of ideas. It's a very sort of ideas orientated aspect. And of course there's relationships with Mercury sextile Venus. It's relationships, it can improve. It's not necessarily about new relationships, but it's more about taking sort of existing relationships, and if there have been sort of recent problems in a relationship, then with Mercury sextile Venus, you have a chance to repair any damage that might have been done, and it's a great time for sort of building bridges. And also with Mercury sextile Venus, you can think about how you relate and what you're getting right and what you're getting wrong. There are always ways in which you can relate to people better. And Mercury sextile Venus, and over the next 3 weeks, while that, because I do think that this Mercury sextile Venus might literally last for 3 weeks, even though it's a one-off aspect. It will just allow you to just fine tune the way you present yourself. Now, as far as the specifics of today is concerned, the moon is moving into Taurus, and so I don't think that today there's a great deal that you have to do. You may just prefer to just step off step off the merry-go-round, step off the carousel, whatever, and just review things. Although the moon does make a sextile to Jupiter, and that moon sextile Jupiter, okay, that's a fortunate aspect. It's fortunate for everyone, and as far as you're concerned, it could be fortunate. It could actually be fortunate for money. So it could be that you just have a better understanding of money. Remember Jupiter is in Cancer, and a very financially orientated sign in the Gemini chart. And so with the moon making a sextile to Jupiter, you may start to see how things could be made better and sort of more secure for yourself. But don't forget sort of relationships as well. I've already suggested that things are looking pretty good with relationships, with Mercury sextile Venus and moon sextile Jupiter kind of further improves the situation. Cancer, it's a good day. I mean, it's a good day for most people, and it's a particularly good day for you. And the reason it's a good day is is the moon. The moon is the moon is making some great aspects. In particular, the moon is making a sextile to Jupiter. Did I say great aspects in the plural? I probably should have said in the singular, just a single aspect, moon sextile Jupiter. Sorry for that. But moon sextile Jupiter is, it's wonderful because the moon is exalted in Taurus, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so they're coming together, and of course in your case, Jupiter is moving through your sign, so you should find today that things work out pretty well. Things are just sort of naturally in place, and you will, I think, sort of be luckier than average. And the moon is especially fortunate because it's in early Taurus. It's sort of at noon New York time. Moon is at 3 degrees Taurus, and 3 degrees Taurus is the point of the moon's exaltation. And of course, and from a Vedic perspective, you'd kind of say it was more the point of the moon's maximum exaltation. But of course, this is not a Vedic chart. Of course, from a Vedic view, the moon would be in Aries. But it's just that in Vedic astrology there is this concept of maximum and minimum exaltation, as it's more like a cycle. It's how close the moon is to 3 degrees Taurus, which I think is an interesting idea. But still, the moon is in early Taurus, or it will be in early Taurus if you're in Australia or New Zealand. But with the moon in early Taurus, it's especially good, and it really allows you to really come over in a very effective way. And if social matters are of any interest to you, I think that you'll be able to really present yourself effectively, and people will notice you. But there's no need to struggle. There's no need to make an effort. You can just be yourself, and do not be afraid of social interaction. And, I mean, it's true that Cancer can have a shy streak. It's quite a sensitive sign, and you might want to avoid other people. Why take the risk? But I think you should try to be adventurous, because as soon as people meet you, there's so much you're able to present of yourself that they will like. It's a lucky day, and as far as relationships are concerned, I mean, it has to be a good day generally, because Moon is sextile Jupiter. So as far as relationships are concerned, you can certainly perform sort of your end of the bargain. You'll come over as a really pleasant, considerate, nice person. As far as other people are concerned, it may be that you feel that at times, other people aren't entirely pulling their weight, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, the point is that it's you that matters, and I think that it's a day when I would just encourage you to just make the most of things, and and also there's a sextile between Mercury and Venus. That's that is it's quite a subtle aspect from a Cancerian view, but it does mean that you can do things that are of personal benefit. And of course Mercury is going retrograde, and you might think Mercury retrograde isn't so good, but it does say something about money. Mercury has been in the finance sector of your chart for some time, and it will stay there until September. And with Mercury going retrograde, sextile Venus, perhaps you just have a chance to go over some financial details or arrangements again. So perhaps you're locked into something financially, or you've made some agreement financially which you've sort of just taken for granted it exists, and you're just gonna that's the way it is. And with Mercury going retrograde, it may be that over the next few weeks you can have a look at what kind of agreements you've made and how you've set your finances up, just having another look at it all. And you might want to make some changes, and you should look at things from a perspective that you are not really committed to anything. Okay, sometimes some things I understand you are committed to because you've got legal agreements, but there may be things that you feel there may be some moral commitment, but when you actually look at it again, you'll be seeing that may not make full sense. And with Mercury sextile Venus, and this Mercury sextile Venus, because it takes place at the moment Mercury goes retrograde, may actually say something about the next few weeks. So if you want to make financial rearrangements over the next few weeks, I think you very much can. Leo, Mercury has been moving through your sign for some time. It does stay in Leo for a long time, and it's now July the 18th, and it will be in Leo until September. And the reason it stays in Leo for so long is because it goes retrograde, but it doesn't go retrograde so much that it leaves Leo and goes back into Cancer. So Mercury stays in your sign, and I don't know how you're experiencing Mercury in Leo, but it should ideally be a time when you can do a lot of thinking, a lot of planning. You should be sort of full of ideas, and also I think Leo, you're going to have a lot to say, and that's can be a good thing. And perhaps you need to think about what conclusions you have been drawing so far. So far, you've seen things, you've understood things, and you may be ready to make conclusions, but maybe you don't want to be too hasty. And now that Mercury is going retrograde, you may have a chance to look at things again. And when you look at things again, it may occur to you that you've made a few mistakes. Now, that's a good thing. And I think, as I've been telling really all of the signs, that this Mercury retrograde is potentially a positive. It's not anything to be afraid of. I think that it may represent a few weeks when you really are given a chance to have another go, to have another look, and you don't have to be committed to anything. You might feel that you're ready to make the next step, But as Mercury goes retrograde, you stop. Maybe you stop just before the precipice, and you go back. You see what you've done. You look at the decisions you've made, and yeah, you realize that you've made mistakes. And you know what? It's okay to go back on your words. And that seemed a terrible thing to do U-turns, to change your mind. But it's absolutely okay to change your mind. It's a good thing to change your mind sometimes. It might be embarrassing, but you have to think about the longer term. And so, don't be afraid of Mercury going retrograde. Also, Mercury goes retrograde sextile Venus. And so with Mercury sextile Venus, that says something about how you are going to be able to present yourself, not just today, but over the next few weeks. And I think that over the next few weeks, you're going to be able to present yourself in a very effective way, and you can demonstrate your intelligence and also your flexibility. Now, I know that Leo does not have a reputation for being particularly flexible, all things being equal. I mean, after all, Leo is a fixed sign, but you can be flexible, a lot more flexible than usual. And, by showing that you're able to listen, and even that you're able to change your mind, I think that people are going to very much appreciate that. And so, don't be afraid of making changes, and even admitting you're wrong. If you admit you're wrong, people will really appreciate it, strange as that might sound. And also Leo, there's actually a lot happening today. You've got Moon, by the way, moving into Taurus, and Moon moving into Taurus. It's a great place for the Moon to be, especially as it's sextile Jupiter. And so that Moon moving into Taurus, that could say something about your ambitions, and suddenly you are becoming more ambitious than usual. I don't know if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you might think, oh, it's the high summer, there's not much that can be done. There's always something that can be done. And with Moon in Taurus, sextile Jupiter, there are definite opportunities today. Now, some of these opportunities may not be obvious. You may have to look for them in sort of hidden places, and you don't have to make a big drama about it. You can actually do things which can improve your situation without really drawing any attention to yourself, and that's probably for the best, isn't it? And so Leo, that's looking good, and and it's you're even helped by the fact that you just come over as being actually quite optimistic and uplifting. So when people come into contact with you, you know what to say, and you can say things which make them happy and make them want to support you. And it's a virtuous circle. And if you're saying things which are optimistic, then you're making yourself feel optimistic. And I think that today you can really feel that things are on the up, and you can convince yourself that there are real possibilities. But just don't be impatient. I mean, no one has to be impatient. Mercury is retrograde. Mercury's going retrograde, so there's 3 weeks to just have another look at things, and to sort of refine your plans. But underlying it all is, or should be, a fundamental belief that things really are going to work out. Virgo, I've been talking a lot about Mercury. Mercury has just gone stationary direct, and Mercury is, of course, an important planet if you're a Virgo. And maybe if you're a Virgo, you've been slightly concerned about the prospect of Mercury going retrograde. But I am of the view, which I've been explaining to everyone as I've been going through the signs, that Mercury going retrograde is actually a positive. It's something that you should be pleased about. And I'm not saying that Mercury going retrograde is always a good thing, but what makes me optimistic about this Mercury going retrograde is, firstly, it's on the Aries point. It's 135 degrees from the Aries point, so that's a powerful point for it to be on. It is about the world. It's about communicating with the world at large. That's the first thing about it. Secondly, it is making a sextile to Venus, and that sextile to Venus does very much colour what this Mercury retrograde is all about. And Venus is a fortunate planet, and so with Mercury making a sextile to Venus, that makes you fortunate. And so with Mercury going retrograde, it's a chance for you to really make the most of your good fortune, or even to sort of develop your good fortune. And perhaps you can do some slight reconfiguring. When Mercury's going retrograde, okay, it's not a time for moving into new territory. I mean, that's always something we can say about Mercury, especially if you're a Virgo. You're not moving forward anymore. You are, in fact, sort of moving backwards. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with moving backwards, because if you're moving backwards, it means you're just having a chance to just go back over old ground. It always has to happen. If you're trying to make progress, it's great, but you can't just do something, complete a task, and just move on, because you don't know how you've completed the task. You may have done it well, but you might not have done it well enough. And so with Mercury going retrograde, you just haven't had the opportunity to just go back over things, to change your mind. It's always good to be able to change your mind. And I think as a Virgo, you actually appreciate that. So you are not committed to anything. You might think that, it's too late, everything's over, the die is cast, and all of that kind of thing. It's not. And over the next few weeks, you can just look at everything you've done, everything you're planning, and just change things around if you want to. And you don't have to make a big fuss about it. You probably don't even need to tell anyone. You just quietly go over it all again. And when you do that, you make some changes, and you change things for the better. And you're really helped by the fact that Mercury is sextile Venus, and Mercury sextile Venus. That really does improve things, and it colours the whole Mercury retrograde experience. And that Venus, remember Venus is in Gemini. It's a very sort of ambition orientated placement for Venus. And so with Mercury sextile Venus, you can actually do things which allow you to achieve some of your ambitions, or make it more likely that you'll achieve your ambitions. It's not that you'll be necessarily achieving ambitions over the next few weeks, but you'll be creating the groundwork for future success. And of course, won't be long before the sun goes into Virgo, before the Virgo season starts. Just the end of August, the end of next month. So that's when when things can start to move. So it can start to move. So in some ways, there's a bit of preparation here, but that does really look positive. So do take advantage of the opportunity that Mercury going retrograde gives you. And additionally, we've got the moon making a sextile to Jupiter, and that moon sextile Jupiter might say something about how you can present yourself and how you get on with people. And I think that you can get on with people very well, and you can come over as someone who is interesting and who has a different view. and that will be appreciated. And so this could sort of help in terms of relationships. Maybe existing relationships, they might need something extra, but I think that's something extra is something that you can provide, but it has to be something different. So I know that I've just said that in general with Mercury, but you should be looking to the past and sort of going over the past just to make sure that it's all sorted out. But that doesn't mean to say that you should be close-minded. No, it's not. Today is not about being close-minded. The moon is in Taurus. It gives you opportunities to explore new things, to consider new things, to talk about new things, and that will be very much appreciated from a perspective of relationships. So overall, Virgo, I'm optimistic, and things should be going your way. And as far as Mercury retrograde is concerned, certainly nothing to be afraid of. Libra, today you're probably quite perceptive. You might just understand things that other people miss, and so that's kind of strange, isn't it? One doesn't normally sort of link Libra with sort of extra sensitivity, at least on an emotional sense. I'm not saying that Libra is an unemotional sign, but it is an air sign. It's not a water sign. But at the moment, Librans are quite sensitive, and perhaps more sensitive than other people. So that might be that you just are able to see subtleties that just don't occur to anyone else, and that could give you an advantage. So if you're trying to understand something, you kind of get it, and you get it before anyone else does. And so what is it that you might be trying to understand? Well, it might be about other people, how people behave, what motivates them. And in a competitive situation, you do have a chance to seize the advantage, and you seize the advantage because of your psychological insight. So if you feel that something is right, or you feel that someone is of a particular personality type, then do trust your judgment. And it may be that you'll make decisions based on your judgment, and if you make those kind of decisions, I think that those decisions are going to work very well. And additionally, when you look at your social environment, this is something Librans often do. If your social environment matters to you, then you might want to reconsider things. So look at the people who you have been sort of meeting over the last few weeks, and then with Mercury, going retrograde, you can just have another look at things, and you might realize, for example, that some connections you've recently made are not really going to work out, and that you have second thoughts, and the reason you have second thoughts is just because of your sensitivity. So from a social perspective, absolutely nothing is written in stone. You haven't committed yourself, and just because you've been friendly with someone in the past, or they've been friendly to you, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, because you actually understand what the underlying picture really is. And additionally, when Mercury goes retrograde, and it does go retrograde today, it is making a sextile to Venus, and Venus is, of course, your ruler. And so with Mercury sextile Venus, that is a fortunate aspect. And in a way, this aspect persists. I mean, I know it's a one-day aspect, but the thing is that Mercury is at a standstill. And so you could say that for the whole next 3 weeks, you have a Mercury sextile Venus feel there. And so Mercury sextile Venus, that does give you extra insight and extra intelligence, and you can rise above things, and you really start to see things for what they really are. And and of course this does link with the period of Mercury going retrograde, and so there is a lot of reconsideration here, and it's reconsideration that is entirely for the good. So it's important that you take advantage of all of that, and and as far as your ambitions are concerned, you know what's needed. So Libra, overall, I would have said it's looking a pretty good day, but the only thing that is important is that you do take a serious approach. It's not a day for trivializing things. If you trivialize things, then a lot of the good things that I've been talking about, and maybe it's good luck or whatever, may not come to pass. The universe will not appreciate it if you make light of things. You have to take everything seriously, and everything you see, every observation, every passing thought, passing insight, it's there for a reason, and you have to hold on to it and work it through. And it's not a joke. And so if you take a serious approach, if you take the universe seriously, then the universe will give you everything you need. So there is some choice there. You can have an unproductive day if you want to have an unproductive day. If you want to treat everything as a joke, then things won't work so well. But if you are determined to make the most of everything you're given, then things look pretty good for you. Scorpio, the moon is edging into Taurus, and Taurus is, of course, your opposite sign. And so, with the moon in Taurus, there could be a certain emphasis on relationships, over the next few days. I mean, you'll certainly be aware of how other people can have an influence on you, and quite what you do once you realize that influence exists. Well, in a way that's up to you. But just because someone is having an influence on you, it doesn't mean that it is a bad thing. I mean, especially the moon in Taurus, it is making a sextile to Jupiter. So moon sextile Jupiter is it's obviously a fortunate planet, and so the right people can really make things better for you. In fact, some people can be very lucky for you, and so if possible, Scorpio, really try to think the best of everyone. Now, there are some people you just know are up to no good. You can't trust them, and you know that. But if there is any uncertainty, then try to give people a chance. And and relationships in general, especially relationships with people you're already involved with, I think should work out in a way that is quite satisfactory because of that moon sextile Jupiter. It is a great aspect, moon sextile Jupiter, and additionally you can learn from other people. I mean, I know, Scorpio, you know a great deal, and you're very sensitive, and you just understand things, but there's always more. There's always more you could find out about. And Mercury is going stationary retrograde, but it's going Mercury stationary retrograde sextile Venus. And so that sextile to Venus is about potentially getting knowledge from other people, understanding things better because of input you get from others. And continuing with the Mercury theme, Mercury is important. Mercury's in Leo. It's right in the middle of Leo. It goes retrograde at 15 and a half degrees Leo, and so right in the middle of the sign. And from a Scorpio view, Leo is a sign that is often connected with career and ambition and status. It's a high-profile sign, and so Mercury is there, and Mercury is going retrograde here. And of course, it's an angular house in the Scorpio horoscope. So don't underestimate the impact of Mercury going retrograde. Now, is this a good thing, Mercury going retrograde? I think it is, but it does mean that you have to accept that over the next few weeks, things may be slower. And not just because it's the summer. I mean, I know that, or certainly in the Northern Hemisphere it's the summer, but not just because of that. There are things that just you need to reconsider. So you might feel that you're ready to move on to the next stage, develop things further, but really with Mercury going retrograde, it's a time to perhaps to reconsider, some of your ambitions. You will have ambitions, whether you're working or not. All of us have ambitions, but with Mercury going retrograde, some of your ambitions do need to be reconsidered, I think. And for the next 3 weeks, when Mercury continues just going backwards, and I think it goes back as far as 4 degrees 15 Leo. There is work to be done, and this is work you shouldn't be afraid of. It's not a waste of time. It's just about you being thorough, looking at what you've done in the past, going over it again, and perhaps seeing things in a new way. And it just is very likely that some of your ambitions need to just be reconsidered, or maybe just need to be retuned, because you're going in the right direction. You're 90% of the way there, but just something needs to be slightly changed. And that might be the experience of Mercury going retrograde. But I do regard Mercury going retrograde as being something positive, and I don't think you're necessarily on your own, because Mercury goes retrograde sextile Venus, and so it's possible that that over the next few weeks, as you reconsider, you can get a lot of assistance from other people, advice. I know that you're a Scorpio and you like to sort of keep things to yourself sometimes, but there is a place for discussion. And if something's bothering you, or if there's something you don't know about, then it's absolutely okay to tell people about it and get their view. And I think when you hear what another person has to say, I think that very often that can just make things a lot easier. It can really sort of lighten things up for you. So you're not tackling anything on your own. And when Mercury goes forward again, which is on August the 11th, then you can start to sort of you yourself can move forward, with whatever you're planning. Sagittarius, not everything is in order. Some things may have got slightly chaotic, and so it might be a good idea to do some sort of reshuffling, and having another look, and being quite thorough about it. As a Sagittarius, that might not be something you want to do. You've got other priorities, but once you get going on it, once you decide that you've got to make things better, you can make things better, then you should start to make really good progress, especially when the moon moves into Taurus. It does make a sextile to Jupiter. That moon sextile Jupiter, it's great aspect. Jupiter is your ruler, and so it does allow you to be very thorough, and you might be surprised by your own thoroughness, and you don't have to tell anyone else what you're doing. You can just sort out things that have just been sort of building up for the last few weeks, and if you make the effort, in a couple of days, things can just be a lot clearer, and you'll realize that once you've created a space, then you'll be able to see out, and then you'll be able to sort of start making progress. And it might be, actually, if you think about it, but perhaps over the last few days, some of your progress has been slower than expected because there have been things in your way, and those things in your way can now be removed. Now, one thing going on today, which can't be avoided, is Mercury going retrograde, and Mercury goes retrograde for 3 weeks, and I am of the view that this Mercury retrograde is a fortunate event, and it does say something about you, and it also says something about other people. Mercury in the Sagittarian chart, it does rule Gemini, which is your opposite sign, and so you need to monitor other people and the people closest to you while Mercury is retrograde. They might be in a state of flux, or they might feel that they're not ready to do something, or they might have second thoughts, and this shouldn't bother you at all. And they're not ready to take the next step, whatever that next step might be. And it's very important, Sagittarius, that you are very tolerant right now to other people. Let them change their mind. Let them say one thing one moment, say something else the next. Don't hold anyone to their word. And if someone breaks their word, it's not necessarily because they're being unreliable. It's just because, as far as they're concerned, things have changed, and you need to allow that. And change is important. Change is a good thing, and you should really accept that. And Mercury does make a sextile to Venus, and of course Venus is in Gemini, which is of course your opposite sign. And so with Mercury sextile Venus going retrograde, it may say something about the development of some relationship you're involved with. The relationship, it may be like one step back, 2 steps forward. Just something has to be retuned, and I think it can be retuned in a way that is very effective with Mercury sextile Venus. And if you are accepting of people as they change their mind, as they are indecisive. There's nothing wrong with being indecisive, by the way. If you're accepting of people when they're in that state, I do believe that will very much be appreciated. And also consider your own capacity for being indecisive. Some of your ideas, your ambitions, something things that you might have regarded as being very important, suddenly you're having second thoughts. Not necessarily in a bad way, but you're just having second thoughts, and you thought you were going to do something, you thought you were ready for something, and now you're thinking, well, maybe you're not ready at all. And perhaps you just have to go over things one more time, go over things again. And this is especially the case if you're working from a sort of career business view. If you feel you don't understand something or you're not ready for the next step, then just wait it out. And there may be things you need to think about, learn about, sort of develop in your own mind. And that's something that you very much you can do. And when Mercury goes direct on August the 11th, things will be easier, things will become clearer. And then perhaps when Mercury goes into the next sign, because Mercury's been in Leo for a long time, but when Mercury goes into Virgo, then that will be when you can really start to move forward with things. But Mercury doesn't go into Virgo for a bit of time, not for nearly 2 months. I think it's September the 18th, Mercury goes into Virgo. So if you're really planning on sort of moving forward with some big ambition, you are ready, but you're now having some second thoughts, then it just may take a couple of months for the whole thing to sort of work its way through. So do be ready for that. Capricorn, the moon is moving into Taurus, and with the moon moving into Taurus, that's kind of good news, really. I mean, the moon in Aries might have just been too much of a good thing. Aries is an angular house in a Capricorn chart, and so with the moon in Aries, you've already got Saturn in Aries and Neptune in Aries, and with the moon in Aries, you weren't fully ready for doing much, and you perhaps just wanted to stay where you were, and you weren't especially in the mood for change or variety. And now that the moon is moving into Taurus, okay, the moon might not move into Taurus until this evening if you're this evening if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but the moon will get there in the end. But with the moon moving into Taurus, you're going to become just more open, I think, and more aware of what is possible, and you're probably going to be an easier person to deal with. With the moon in Aries, there may have been things that you perhaps felt you wanted to keep to yourself, and some people might have regarded you as being a little cagey. But now that the moon is in Taurus, and of course when the moon moves into Taurus, it starts making a sextile to Jupiter. So with the moon making in Taurus, making a sextile to Jupiter in Cancer, that really does allow you to be enthusiastic, and people are going to really pick up on that, and there'll be sort of a new lightness to your step, and so that in turn is going to just make it just easier for you to deal with people on a sort of an interpersonal level, and you are going to be more open, more enthusiastic, and and more positive. But it's not just about other people, it's about you, and it's about you valuing yourself with the moon in Taurus. And sometimes Capricorn, you can be a bit modest and you can undervalue what you do, but no excuse for that. And now that the moon is in Taurus, you'll start to realize that there are things that you can do, and you can do them very well, and perhaps you can do them even better if you just give yourself the chance. And so that might be how moon in Taurus, particularly with the sextile to Jupiter, you can start to feel good about yourself, and just to know that you're in the right place, and you can be yourself without having to apologize, and without necessarily having to make any adjustments. Now, one thing we do have today is Mercury going Mercury going retrograde, and of course I've made a big fuss about Mercury going retrograde. I'm not convinced that for you, Capricorn, this Mercury going retrograde is especially important. I probably would venture to suggest that you don't even need to worry about it, though if it's at all relevant, it may allow you to think about your direction and perhaps your work, because Mercury is making a sextile to Venus, and so with this Mercury sextile Venus, it actually may make you come over as being quite competent. I mean, you are competent anyway, but it may give you extra competence. I know you don't normally associate Venus with competence, but I think in your case right now it is about competence and being able to express competence, so people will recognize that you know what you're doing and you're good at what you're doing, and they will trust you, and yeah, they will recognize that you are indeed competent. And so that's probably the main manifestation of Mercury sextile Venus, just having an ability to do things that maybe other people can't do. And it's additionally possible that you have a chance to pick up on things which other people have got wrong. Maybe there's something unfinished. Someone tried to do something and they just couldn't get it together. It was too difficult, or they couldn't be bothered. And you, Capricorn, are the one who can have another look at it, who can pick up the pieces and just get it together very quickly. So don't be afraid of picking up someone's discarded piece of work. It might sound demeaning, but someone's got to do it, and once you sort it out, you'll get the recognition you deserve. And so that's today, Capricorn. I think today is a day of change. I think you become more active, probably more sociable, and certainly more confident. And as far as other people are concerned, people are going to like you, and you're someone they are going to trust, and that's especially the case in a sort of interpersonal setting. So relationships should be okay, and everything looks okay. So not much to complain about. Aquarius. Mercury is going retrograde. I mean, that is obviously the big event of the day, and Mercury retrograde is obviously it's not a one-day wonder. I mean, Mercury does go retrograde for 3 weeks, and in your case, Mercury is going retrograde in Leo, which is your opposite sign. And so with Mercury retrograde in Leo, it may say something about relationships and how people are responding and your experience of other people. And so it's important that you don't make assumptions about anyone, because people can change. I mean, that is the nature of people. And also with Mercury going retrograde, so Mercury, it reaches a certain point, it starts going backwards, and so likewise with other people, they reach a certain point, they're ready to make decisions, they're ready to take the next step, and then something changes, and they have second thoughts. And you, Aquarius, need to accept that. You need to accept that everything is in a state of change, that people are in a state of change. And so, if you've been promised anything, or someone has made a commitment that you've made an assumption about, you shouldn't assume that it will be carried through. And if anyone wants to change their mind or back out of something, you should take it in your stride. Don't hold it against anyone if they change their mind. It's okay. And by being accepting of other people as they change their mind, I do think that they will very much appreciate it. And Mercury, it is going retrograde, but it is going retrograde sextile Venus. And so with Mercury retrograde sextile Venus, from a relationship perspective, that's quite a good aspect. And it may well be that the best way to improve relationships and to develop relationships is just to be open to change and the possibility of change. It's not always about moving forward. It's sometimes about going back over old ground and asking fundamental questions. But the key thing is that you yourself are not seen as a tyrant, as someone to be afraid of. I mean, you're not a tyrant, and you're no one to be afraid of. And so by being open and tolerant, Aquarius, in relationships, and that is really going to make a big difference. Now, as far as your own stance is concerned, like today, I think that today you are quite set in your ways, and so you might be set in your ways, and that doesn't say anything about other people. But so you don't want too much change, and you're probably comfortable where you are. And if other people want to do their own thing, well, you let them do it. You let them do it, within reason. And so the moon is in Taurus. It's making a sextile to Venus. I mean, it's a great aspect. Sextile Venus, sextile Jupiter. Moon is in Taurus. It's making a sextile to Jupiter. It's a great aspect, but it's not necessarily a very exciting aspect. And from an Aquarian perspective, this sextile between the moon and Jupiter may just allow you to just settle down and find somewhere that you are comfortable. And doesn't mean you have to be lazy. There are certainly things you can do, probably, but you should do. But it's all got to be done in your own way. And maybe also you need to just look after yourself with moon sextile Jupiter. So if you feel the need to do something to make yourself feel sort of fitter, healthier with this moon sextile Jupiter, that is something you can do. And maybe it's a time where you just need to get your energy back, and might be something you can do it on your own and in your own way, and you don't have to worry about outside interference. And so just enjoy your own company. I mean, if need be. I mean, I think other people are there for you, but you just have to remember that other people, have their own way of looking at things, and other people, they are in a process of change, and let them change and develop, in their own way, and it doesn't affect you, and you don't have to. You should not, but you mustn't be judgmental about it, and so I'm not saying that today is going to be fantastic or wonderfully exciting, but I think that today can be comfortable and reassuring, and the more tolerant you are, the better for everyone. Pisces, the moon is making a sextile to Jupiter, and moon sextile Jupiter, it's a really good aspect. Moon in Taurus, moon is exalted in Taurus, and it's sextile Jupiter, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and so that is an overall fantastic aspect that you may say a lot about today. It might say something about maybe more about tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but certainly in Europe, Africa, Americas, that moon sextile Jupiter is just really important. And Jupiter is your ruler, and with the moon sextile Jupiter, you can really be yourself, and you can express yourself, and you can just feel you just one with the world, and you will be lucky, luckier than average. So I don't know what you can do, but make sure that you're in a position to take advantage of everything that is available. And because it's a sextile, it's not that you have to do anything over the top, or you don't have to be super ambitious and be aggressive about it. In fact, you mustn't be aggressive about it. Aggression is not going to get anywhere. You just have to be there and open to sort of new possibilities and new experiences, and just realize that luck can take many forms, and it's not necessarily going to manifest in the way you expect. And additionally, we have a situation where Mercury is going retrograde. And of course, I've been going on and on about Mercury going retrograde. And Mercury going retrograde means different things to different people, different signs, of course, as well. And so, as far as you're concerned, Mercury goes retrograde and stays retrograde for 3 weeks. And so what might this be about? It might be, Pisces, that there are certain things that you have been putting off, and you've just wanted to keep moving forward as best you can, and you thought, progress is a virtue, is it not? But progress has its limits, because as you make progress, you leave a trail, and you sort of leave sort of unfinished business, and you move from one thing to another. And if you go too far, you can find that you can find that you're stuck, or you've run out of energy, or you don't know what you're doing anymore. And that's not a situation you want to be in. And with Mercury going retrograde, it's a chance to just stop it, stop doing what you've been doing, stop thinking that constant growth, constant advancement is the way forward. And what instead you should be doing is going backwards, reconsidering what you've done in the past, and perhaps also clearing up after yourself, or perhaps after other people as well. And because there is this sort of trail of garbage and refuse. I don't know how that's manifesting in your life, but it's there at some level. And so maybe over the next 3 weeks, it's a time to sort of clear up this trail and make sure that everything is all in order. Because if you want to go further, you need to make sure that everything is clear, and it's not clear. And so that might be something that you should be attending to over the next 3 weeks. And it applies, not just to sort of things around you, things that haven't been done, things that are half finished. It also relates to your own health and your attitude to your health, and things that you've been doing or not doing, and think about how you've been leading your life recently. And maybe you haven't been as good to yourself as you should have been, and Mercury going retrograde, is a great opportunity to be thinking about your health and your lifestyle, and to be thinking about what needs to be changed. And it's an entirely positive process. It may not even be difficult, because Mercury is making a a sextile to Venus, and so with Mercury making a sextile to Venus, Venus is a very balancing energy in this context, and so you can think about what makes you feel comfortable, grounded, and balanced, and it'll just actually be very, very clear what you need to do, and so that's perhaps what you can be doing, over the next 3 weeks. It might not sound very interesting, but it's not really about interest. It's just about just taking a step back temporarily. It's only 3 weeks, and then when Mercury goes direct, that's August the 11th. Then perhaps you yourself can start to move forward, to start moving into new ground. But I think that right now, moving into new ground, I don't think that's necessarily something that you have to do. So those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 46, which is pushing upward. This is a fairly positive hexagram, which talks about progress. We are developing. We have ideas. We want to move forward. There is a sort of a contradiction here, you could say, because Mercury is just turned stationary retrograde. And you might think, well, that could be the end of something where we have to kind of stop work almost. But, as I've tried to explain in this video so far, I'm not convinced that this Mercury retrograde is necessarily going to be so negative. I think for many of us, it might actually be a real opportunity. And so, pushing upward, does show us, really trying to make progress, even though Mercury is is retrograde. But I should say that the I Ching and the astrology are independent. The I Ching is a different view, and so with this hexagram, we have the fourth and the fifth lines moving, and so fourth line moving, there is a real indication here that we really can achieve our goals. So whatever we're trying to achieve today, we can get it done, and that is certainly possible. And the fifth line, even more so. Fifth line talks about some ascent. We keep moving upwards. We even get to the top of a mountain. But if we're going to go this far, we have to make sure that we are correct. We can't just rush forward. That would not be the right approach. Things would go wrong if we were to rush forward. So we have to be careful, and we have to be slow and considered, and make sure that everything is in order, and that we sort of act with a certain amount of sort of dignity. And when I'm thinking about moving up the mountain, looking at the I Ching, I got sort of a picture of some sort of Chinese royal court sort of moving up the mountain, and everything has got to be done appropriately. And so we can't have any shortcuts, and there may be certain rituals that have to be performed, and we have to make sure that we follow the form. But it does seem as if we are making progress. But of course, if we are making progress, we are pushing upward. It does mean responsibility, and that takes us to the second hexagram, and the second hexagram is preponderance of the great, 28, and preponderance of the great is kind of taking things to the next step, and it shows what we've got, what we've created for ourselves once we've started to push upwards, and we have created a fair amount of obligation, and we've taken on board, quite a lot of work, and you can see this in the hexagram here, preponderance of a great. You see, middle in the middle we got these 4 unbroken lines. This is a heavy weight with short handles, so it's difficult for us to carry. So, pushing upward does have a cost, and the more we progress, the more we have to take on, and so the question is, can we bear the burden? And it's not necessarily, it's not going to be easy. And I think we can bear the burden, but you have to ask yourself, how far can you go? And so, don't take on too much, and, be aware of what you can accomplish. And if it's too much, well, just say no. I mean, that is okay. But, provided you are realistic and your limits, then, overall, I think that, you'll accomplish everything today that you set out to achieve. And finally, I want to look at the astrology, and I want to consider Mercury going stationary direct. And so let's start by looking at the chart of Mercury direct. So, sorry, Mercury retrograde. The chart of Mercury going retrograde. So here it is, the point where Mercury is stationary retrograde. So I make it that London time, Mercury goes retrograde at 5:45 a.m. and there is Mercury, and you can see the sort of the R next to it, a reminder that it has gone retrograde, and it's. Let me just make absolutely sure that I got the timing right. If I'm going to talk about that chart, I don't want to get the Mercury. So it says it goes Greenwich Mean Time at 4:45 a.m. on the 18th. So we add an R to the British summertime. So that is it, 5:45, and so that's the moment. There are a couple of things about this Mercury going retrograde. Now, when we normally think about Mercury going retrograde, we think about 3 weeks when things are up the creek, when there are going to be delays. There are going to be, people associate it with transport delays, traffic jams, maybe accidents affecting the infrastructure. If we send letters while Mercury is retrograde, they take ages to get there. We try to tell people something when Mercury is retrograde, and they don't listen. And we shouldn't really start anything while Mercury is retrograde. I'm not saying any of that is wrong, but I am saying that maybe this Mercury retrograde might be slightly different from the usual retrograde Mercuries. Now, one thing about this Mercury retrograde, okay, it's at 1535 Leo. So that means that it's quite close to the Aries point. So it's 135 degrees from the Aries point. So that may say something about what this particular Mercury is about. I mean, to give you an idea, let me look at what Alfred Witte says when he talks about the Mercury-Aries combination. So in Uranian, this is Alfred Witte's Rules for Planetary Pictures. And he says about Aries Mercury, when he describes it, he says, public opinions, general thinking, motion, news, neighborhood. That is rather general. So it gives us the idea that Mercury is not just working on the personal level, it's sort of working on a broader level, on a collective level. It is about sort of news. What is the news? public opinion. What are people thinking? And it might be, if public opinion, I mean, public opinion can change, can't it? So if you take Vitta's interpretation, you might say Mercury retrograde, sesquiquadrate the Aries point. If you're a politician, that might be relevant because public opinion could shift very quickly. And for example, you look at Trump. He's got himself into a real mess with Epstein, hasn't he? I mean, he really has, because he became president on the well, it helped. I mean, wasn't the only reason, but he really used the Epstein sort of bandwagon to get support. Now he doesn't want files to be released, so it's a real problem for him. And public opinion can change, and politicians with Mercury going stationary 135 degrees from the Aries point, they really do need to be aware of that. And it may be retrograde, and so things can change, and the news flow can change. So that's one aspect of Mercury, the fact that Mercury is 135 degrees from the Aries point. And additionally, we have Mercury going stationary exactly sextile Venus. Now, I think that is important, and I think that could colour the whole Mercury retrograde experience. And it may indicate that for many of us, Mercury going retrograde is not actually such a bad thing, because you could say that this chart is about the moment Mercury going retrograde, it's frozen, and it's frozen for 3 weeks. And the fact that it's sextile Venus may mean that, for many of us, from a social view, it may actually be quite fortunate. It may be a time to get to know people. We've got to know them up to a point, and Mercury retrograde allows us to sort of go back over old territory and to find out what someone is really like. And it's a sextile. I mean, it's a very pleasant sextile, and so it enables us to talk, and through conversation, people, we might find that someone we thought we knew very well, we can know them far better just by talking to them. And additionally, as we saw when we looked at Reinhold Ebertin, Mercury sextile Venus is connected with art, and so if you've got any form of sort of artistic talent, I mean, we've all supposedly got artistic talent. So I don't think I've got much in the way of artistic talent, but some people have artistic talent. But if you've got anything there, you can do something about it. And when I talk about art, I'm not just talking about pictures. I'm talking about writing, sculpting, making things, whatever it is. We might have underestimated ourselves, and we can go back and make sure that we really know our stuff. And it's a great time for development, and not feeling that we're always having to go forward. So, if you're learning a language, for example, and you're on, chapter 10 of a book, it's not about going to chapter 11. It's about going back to the first 10 chapters to just go over it again. But this is with the Mercury sextile Venus. It's just perhaps going back over the basics of what you can do, and realizing how well you can do it, and reminding everyone of this fact. Mercury sextile Venus. It's about communication. So I think there's a lot that is very positive about this, and also, at the time Mercury goes retrograde, we've got the moon making a sextile to Jupiter. Exalted moon in Taurus making a sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. So I think that the next 3 weeks could be great if we really, really make the most of it. But I'm talking about this on a personal level. From a collective level, I still think Mercury retrograde can be a problem. And yeah, all the stuff about communications and whatever, and the very fact that Mercury is on the Aries point does indicate perhaps communication issues which don't just affect one person but affect lots of people, affect whole countries, even continents. So that might be a way of looking at it, but if as far as the midpoints, it's always a good idea to look at what midpoints Mercury is on. So let's just look at the 90-degree dial of the moment Mercury goes retrograde. So where's Mercury gone? Mercury's there, and so those are the midpoints that Mercury is on, and I'm not saying that we can tell a great deal about it, but there are a lot of couple of hypothetical planets going on here, and so it goes retrograde on the Sun Admetos midpoint. So the Sun Admetos midpoint, I mean Admetos is about delay, and so that Sun Admetos is actually quite a Mercury retrograde kind of thing. And so with Mercury on the Mercury going retrograde on the Sun Admetos midpoint, that could be about delay, things being quite slow. I mean, Alfred Witter in Rules for Planetary Pictures, he says about Mercury on the Sun Admetos midpoint, he says, let's find it, but I think he would emphasize the delay aspect of it. So he says about Mercury on the Sun Admetos, he says, depressed thinking. The mind and thoughts are busy with the soil. Thoughts about land reform. So he's a bit down about Mercury on the Sun Admetos midpoint. I mean, it just could be that it just emphasizes the slowness of it, and perhaps it sort of provides a contrast to some of the sort of the pessimism some of the optimism I was referring to. So there are still depressing things to think about. I don't know about the soil and land reform. We'll have to see, won't we? And then Mercury is on the Venus-Kronos midpoint. Now, Venus-Kronos is about government, and you would think that Venus-Kronos, you could say, would be about female leaders, women in charge of governments. I mean, I can't think of anyone. I mean, I can't think of. Who comes to mind? I don't know. So there may be issues about women in government with Mercury stationing on the Venus-Kronos midpoint. Again, I'm sorry to have to keep referring to Witter. It's not a midpoint that I sort of traditionally midpoint that I spend a lot of time looking at, but I thought it'd be just fun to see what he says. So Mercury on the Venus-Kronos midpoint, he says, he just says charitable thoughts to come to charitable acquaintances through thinking. I'm not sure if I really go with that. And I would instead think about activity relating to female leaders. So if there is a female leaders in your country while Mercury is retrograde, perhaps things can change for the better or for the worse. And finally, there's a question of where is likely to be impacted by what countries are likely to be impacted by this Mercury going retrograde. And so sort of as always, I I start by setting his chart up for London. I mean, there was no particular reason why I needed to set it up for London. It's kind of more convenient. So if I set it up for London, I see that Pluto's on the descendant. There's always something bad going on that I can find relating to the UK, but I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You could say that over the next 3 weeks in London, you concerns about Britain's enemies. Britain. I mean, what else? I mean, the government in London, in the UK, always has to deflect from domestic problems by looking at external enemies, usually in the form of Russia. So that might be one manifestation. But one country that does come to mind is Ireland. Now, I haven't been following sort of Irish politics. I've never been to Ireland, but I know that Ireland doesn't seem to be very comfortable with itself. I mean, no country is particularly comfortable with itself at the moment. But turning to Ireland's chart. So here's a chart. Here is a chart for Ireland, and so you could argue that the chart you should take for Ireland is the Easter Rising, when rebels rose up against the British. Now, this was not obviously the chart of Ireland's independence. I mean, Ireland was still under the control of the British for a couple of years after this event, but symbolically it was the beginning of Ireland, in the same way that the Bastille Day was important. The storming of the Bastille, although in itself the Bastille was kind of irrelevant at the time, the storming of the Bastille was an important foundational moment for France. I think the Easter Rising is an important foundational moment for Ireland, and Mercury goes stationary at 1534 at 1534 Leo. Now that means that it goes stationary conjunct Ireland's Mars, and Mars, if I've got this time right, Mars was rising at the time of Easter Rising. For the time I use, I think it was for some proclamation of independence, and so it hits Mars. It hits Ireland's Mars, and Mars has a semi-square to Pluto. So Mercury is additionally making a semi-square to Ireland's Pluto. So that Mars-Pluto nature, the Mars semi-square Pluto. I mean, I talked about Mars semi-square Pluto, I think yesterday, when I was talking about what kind of events one can expect with Mars semi-square Pluto, or sesquiquadrate Pluto. So it's in there, it's in Ireland's chart, and that says something about Easter Rising, but it says something about the country, and maybe most of the time one doesn't see that Mars Pluto, but it's there. And so Mercury going stationary direct does activate it, and so this could be about demonstrations on the streets. I understand that there's a lot of unhappiness about social problems, about excessive immigration, and so it is a problem, and so that could really be exacerbated by Mars going stationary, by Mercury going stationary direct, because it just does activate something that's already in Ireland's horoscope. And then if we then go and set the precise moment for Mercury going stationary retrograde, but if we set it, rather than set it for London, if we set it for Dublin, the capital of Ireland, instead, we get this chart. So this is the moment Mercury goes stationary retrograde in Dublin. And so you can see in this chart that Saturn is exactly on the midheaven, and Pluto is pretty close to the descendant, and it's close to sunrise. So it just could be that over the next few weeks, with Mercury going direct, and maybe immediately as Mercury goes direct, there could be events in Ireland which are quite sort of noteworthy, and probably quite difficult events, because Mercury is going stationary right on Ireland's Mars. So anyway, that's all I've got to say on Mercury going stationary retrograde. I think for most of us it shouldn't be too bad. I think it actually might be quite positive. It just allows us to go over things and go over things in a really quite a constructive way. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.